Welcome to Cultivate Your Mental Wealth, where I invite you to come thrive with me. My name is Joyce Ozeh. I am a Nigerian American civil rights attorney based in Chicago. I am also a mental health advocate, and I actually have lived experience with anxiety and depression, which is at the forefront of our discussion. But we are talking about mental wellness on the show in all of its forms. And I am so happy to have you here with us. In this show, I invite you to come on this journey with me, where we go from places of mental illness to mental wellness, and from mental wellness to mental abundance. One of my favorite parts of the show is interacting with all of you. So please tell me, where are you tuning in from? What is your name? And what are some of your reservations around mental health or mental wellness? What are some things you're hoping to discover about your own wellness journey? Maybe the journey of a friend, maybe the journey of a family member. Let's get into all of it. Let's dig deep and dig through this together. And I promise you, I am with you. This is our conversation and our show. So, what do I have in store for you today? We have a lot to discuss. As many of you know, it is the holiday season. And while it can be a time of lights, gifts, love, and good cheer, studies have actually shown us that mental illness increases around the holidays and the holiday season. People experience higher levels of depression, anxiety, all sorts of exasperations to their mental illness. So it's so important to discuss mental illness in the holidays. I'll also have a portion of our show where I talk about how to define your own boundaries, to check in with yourself, how to check in with your family members. I also want a time where I interact with all of you. So there is a special segment of the show where I pause and I check out with you all, my friends in this journey. Ask your questions. Let me know how you're doing. There's a dedicated part of this segment where I do speak to folks. If I can't get to your question, I will follow up after the show one by one and respond to your Facebook comments. So make sure that you're commenting. And after our discussion, we're going to preview what's up next in January. I can't wait to release the latest segment topic. And then I want some practical pushes. What are some ways where you can practice mental wealth in your life after we end our conversation today? Okay, so that is just an overview of what we're going to get into for today's segment. I hope you all are excited. I'm excited despite the seriousness of the topic. I'm excited because this conversation is necessary. And our community, we need to speak about these things, especially as it relates to the holidays. Okay, friends, let's set the room. Like I discussed, this is our conversation. I'm going to be speaking mostly, but I do want it to be interactive. So feel free to drop in where you're watching from, what your name is, anything you want to share about mental wellness in the holidays, and anything you're experiencing. And I will get to it in this segment and or after the show. So, as a lot of you have heard, there was a very popular and unfortunate death in our community this week. It was actually announced last week officially. Twitch passed away by suicide last week. For those of you who do not know, Twitch was a choreographer, a dancer, an actor, a co-executive producer, a DJ, a family man, and so much more. He was only 40 years old when he passed away, and he is survived by a wife, Allison Hotkey, and 3 young children. Twitch is African American, and I personally learned of his death after leaving a funeral home. I was attending the visitation of a coworker's grandmother. My coworker was the primary caretaker, so I wanted to just hold space with her. And I attended the visitation. And as soon as I looked down at my phone, I learned that Twitch passed away by suicide. And it was heartbreaking. Not only was he a giant in Hollywood, I mean, he first was a guest DJ for the Ellen DeGeneres show. He already had a whole resume before Ellen DeGeneres, but he was a guest DJ that ended up being a co-executive producer of the show. He was a host on So You Think You Can Dance. I believe he competed on Dancing with the Stars, where he met his wife. I mean, a giant in the space. Definitely drop a comment talking about where you were when you learned of his death and what some of the responses to his death may have brought up in you. I would love to connect in that way and just explore that. But the toughest thing for me, besides just knowing that he left a family behind, was just how he was described by those who knew him. And they talked about how he always presented with joy. He was an entertainer, he was in the industry, he was a dancer, and he just had so much joy. If you Google his pictures, he's smiling in like 95% of them. And he really does present in a joyful way. And that is why it is so important, as Black people especially, where mental illness and mental wellness isn't discussed as primarily as other communities discuss and kind of explore these themes. How a person presents doesn't necessarily indicate how they're doing, how they're feeling, what they're going through. Just because a person is smiling, on screen, dancing, wealthy, that has nothing to do with their inner peace, inner turmoils, inner battles. So we can never judge a book by its cover, and we can never judge our friends by how they're presenting. In my two-part series, I shared my story where I talked about my diagnosis of major depression and anxiety. And I'm telling y'all, my friends would not guess that I was going through all of that. I'm sure that there are friends today that still have no idea that I myself at one time was struggling with suicidal ideation because I was presenting like the young attorney who's eager in the office, who's like waking up on time. Joyce, the life of the party, always has great jokes, always has a nice outfit, always has herself together. But those were presentations. And it's important that we have people in our corner who are going to be able to push past whatever facade, whatever face that we put on to function so that they can get to what's deeper. But it's also important that we are that person in our corner who is willing to get deeper with ourselves. That is kind of an intimidating concept, getting deeper with yourself, pushing past the facade that you don't only put up to others, but a facade that you put up to yourself, avoidance. And in the spirit of all of that, I'm going to say that with the holiday season, I'm actually really, really saddened by the news of Twitch's passing. I'm also not totally surprised because unfortunately, with the holiday season, there are higher suicide rates, higher rates of anxiety, depression, and exacerbation of a multiplicity of mental health diagnoses. So, with that being said, I am here to say not all hope is lost. We don't have to sit and stay in these statistics. I think it's important to know what could happen around the holiday season, but we are able to change the narrative for ourselves and to facilitate the narrative change for our loved ones from awareness. And that's why we're having this conversation, guys. Awareness. awareness of how mental health affects us during the holidays, but also how mental health affects you. So, the first thing I want to talk about before we go into helping our loved ones or helping our coworkers, our family members, our spouses, partners, you got to help yourself. You have to check in with yourself. You know, when you're on a plane and the flight attendants are telling you how to care for yourself in case of an emergency. If you're traveling with a small child, God forbid, if the plane goes down, they always, always say what? Secure your mask first before you go and you help a child or you go to help someone else. It is so important that in the season of wellness, you are checking in with yourself first. Now, how do you feel about checking in with yourself? Does it make you feel a little bit icky? Does it make you feel selfish? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Let me know what you're thinking about that, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of self check ins. For me, it always feels like there's so much to do, so many tasks to check off, so many people to check in on. My dad passed when I was younger. My mom's a single mom, so I'm always thinking about how I'm not calling her enough. I have 3 siblings. I'm always thinking about other people. And in the past few weeks, I've taken on tasks in church, taken on tasks at work, taken on tasks outside of church and work. And I got to a place where I was simply overwhelmed. I had too much on my plate. I had said yes to too many things. And most importantly, I hadn't taken time to slow down. And I realized it was starting to affect my mental health and that I was exhausted. I was lethargic. I didn't have energy. And I was talking to my husband, and he was like, you need to check in with yourself and set boundaries. So, what does a self check in look like? Selfishness is different from self care. You can have self care and not be self centered. And I don't mean just taking bubble baths or lighting candles. I endorse both of them because they both smell good. They make you feel good. But check ins are as difficult and uncomfortable as, how am I doing? Why am I responding with anxiety to this thing? What is the underlying emotion? So when I go to check my work email, my heart is pounding. That response is in response not just to the email, but something else. Is it because what I'm looking at is urgent and due today? Or am I projecting a deadline that doesn't exist? Am I creating urgency for a non-urgent situation? Why am I afraid of this task? Do I believe that I can't do it? Do I believe I don't have enough time to do it? If I can't do it, can I delegate this to someone else? These are the type of check-ins, self-check-ins that I'm referring to when I say check in with yourself. And this is what helps you to process the emotions associated with to-do lists around the holidays. I have to buy all these presents for these people. My husband and I signed up to buy presents for a family who experienced a house fire. And I'm like, I have no idea when I'm going to be able to get to the store to buy these presents, to do this good deed. And my husband looked at me and he said, I'll do it. You don't have to come with me to the store to buy these presents. So that was an example of a to-do list that I said too many yeses to, but I was putting unnecessary pressure on myself to complete a task that I could have easily delegated to my husband or easily delegated to a friend who is looking to serve someone in the community. So a check-in cannot just mean how am I feeling about what I have to do, but also how can I delegate it and what emotions are associated with what I have to do around the holidays. Also important in check-ins is identifying your triggers. It's the holidays. A lot of us spend that time with family, but a lot of us can be triggered by family. What do I mean by triggered? It is totally okay and valid to get anxious around a family member that you may not have had the best history with. If you grew up in instability, it is totally okay and valid that when you think about going to your childhood home or even seeing your parents, you start to get a little bit anxious. You need to call that out, name it, so that you know what's going to trigger you. Because if you know what your triggers are, you can make a plan for it. And guess what? Around the holidays, your triggers don't only have to be family members. Triggers can also be certain topics. I come from a very religious background. I identify as Christian, but also different generations process things differently. And a trigger in my house is talking about religion and politics. And inevitably, if we bring that up during a holiday discussion, it gets very intense, very fast. And by the end of the night, we are all fine. But during the discussion, it is so exhausting. I've identified that religion and politics as a trigger. And now that I've identified it, I can make a plan that when it comes up during the holidays, I can excuse myself from the table. I can gently redirect the conversation to, hey, I brought a board game, let's do that. Or let's see if there's a game on TV or anything else. But because I've identified a trigger, I'm able to make a plan in advance so that when that topic or family member or issue comes up, I can navigate that with more grace and ease, which brings peace and calm to my mind. Also, foods can be triggers. We're going to talk about food and mental health in an entirely different segment, but it is okay to identify, hey, when I eat this food, it doesn't digest well or sit well with me. And sometimes it makes me feel more gloomy, more down. I've learned that eating later at night makes me feel really heavy going into bed. So I have to cut off the time that I'm eating, especially a holiday meal, not to eat past 9, not even to eat past 8:30 in some situations. All of this ties into your mental health, and all of that is a self check-in. Now, a lot of us, again, are going to be with loved ones, family members, friends. What if mental wellness isn't an issue for you personally around the holidays, but you have a family member who you have identified or they identify that they struggle with mental illness? How do you support them during the holidays in their journey to wellness? Again, check in with them. Ask your friends, loved ones questions. Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Is there anything that you need? Oftentimes, people aren't able to articulate what they need, but knowing that there's someone there that's checking in with them consistently is a way to foster wellness and facilitate safety, stability, and consistency in what could be an emotionally chaotic place for them. So check in with your loved ones, ask questions, and make yourself available. It could be as simple as dropping off food for a family member or friend who doesn't want to join you in the festivities, but you want to support them. Drop off their favorite food. Get a card from Grubhub, Uber Eats, any of these food delivery apps so that you can just give it to them and they can sort their wellness knowing that they are taken care of without you being too invasive. And I got to say something about this. This portion of wellness and supporting others, it's going to require special grace, patience, and consistency on your part as a loved one. Patience, grace, consistency. I cannot guarantee that your loved one who's experiencing mental illness is going to receive your efforts to love on them and nurture them with like enthusiasm and joy. But the key there is to be consistent. Put your pride aside. If I ask you nothing else, it's this. It meant so much to me that my friends and my family who were supporting me for years were I didn't want to hang out with them. I didn't want to see them, but they gave me grace and they were consistent in their support without being invasive. They checked in on me in a way that was gentle and not forceful. It made a world of difference to me and for me. So, those are the ways to check in with your loved ones after you've checked in with yourself. But one of my favorite ways of just supporting yourself and anyone else struggling with mental illness in this time, if you can't drop off food, if you can't come visit them, I really encourage prayer. So much of the anxiety and depression that people are experiencing could be linked to spiritual things. It's linked to how they see themselves. It's linked to lies that other people have put on them. It could be friends, employers, any kind of generational lie. You're always going to be this way. People in your family are always this way. Depression runs in your family, so it's always going to be like this. Those are the types of strongholds, the types of kind of sentences, as in like a judgment by a judge or sentencing, that a meal from Grubhub may not be able to fix. And that is why I always, if you are spiritual, I encourage you to pray. Pray for your loved ones. Pray for their mental wellness, their healing, their wholeness. Pray that God is able to reach them so that they are receptive to what you are trying to do. Pray for wisdom and how you should navigate loving them, navigate following up with them. Prayer goes a long way. It is not a cop out. It really does change things. And I can say that with confidence because I am the product of a praying mother, a mother who prayed for me where she didn't know any better in terms of my mental health journey and getting me to a place of mental wellness. But because of how she backed me spiritually, I've been able to overcome literally the most darkest hours of my life. When she couldn't show up physically, she showed up spiritually. And that was a powerful support tool and a powerful weapon. So I so encourage that. So those are some of the ways that we can support ourselves, support our loved ones. And I just kind of wanted to get into a little bit of a check-in. Agnes, so happy to have you join us. Definitely a merry Tuesday night. I know Hanukkah started on Sunday, so for those of you watching, happy Hanukkah. Christmas is coming up. I celebrate Christmas, so it's going to be merry indeed. And I just hope that we're all able to support ourselves and each other in this holiday season. Really looking forward to the gifts, of course, but definitely the fellowship. And definitely, we have so much more to look forward to. I want to give you guys a sneak peek into what you can expect in January. It's wild to think that we won't be meeting until the new year, 2023, but that's literally only a couple weeks away. So it's not too wild, but still kind of wild. And we are going to be discussing for our next show, Tuesday, January 3rd. It is going to be at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to talk about mental wellness as your goal setting. It is going to be the new year. We are going to go off with like a bang. And I know that there's so much excitement when it comes to the new year, resolutions, goals, revisiting old goals. But how do we get our mind right so that what we write down and hope to happen in the new year actually happens. Everything is a product of your thinking and your mind. And you can set goals till kingdom come, but if your mind isn't right, you cannot achieve what you set out to achieve. So join me January 3rd for when we can talk about mental wellness, getting our mind right as we set goals so that we can achieve those goals. I really loved our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining the room. If you're joining late, no worries. I'm going to be monitoring the comment section. I'm so happy to follow up with any questions you have, anything you want to share. I will follow up on Facebook, so make sure you drop a comment, a question, anything of the sort, and I will be there. Heidi, so happy to have you join the room. But this is one of the most critical parts of the show, and that is where we can move into practical pushes so that what we discussed today about mental wellness and the holidays can be applied practically throughout the remainder of the week and the year. So now for our practical pushes towards wellness. Okay, folks, I love this segment because for me, it is so important to have a to-do list or something to practice so that everything we discuss can be implemented into our daily lives. And this part of the segment, my practical push for you is to slow down. Slow down. I have been getting a lot of messages just from friends, family members, and even God in just my daily meditation about the powerful purpose and necessity of rest. Some people call it Sabbath, some people call it a sabbatical, some people call it vacation, holiday. I'm going to call it rest. It is so easy to get lost in the hustle and bustle of the holidays. But I'm here to tell you that that hustle and that bustle is oftentimes manufactured. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to do everything right now. You don't have to do everything quickly. And you don't have to do everything alone. You and I were made for community. That's why we have shows like this, conversations like this. We were made to fellowship with one another. Slow down. And a way to help you slow down, I've crafted some questions that I ask myself every single day. And I encourage you to ask yourself as you're looking at your holiday to-do list, as you're looking at your day-to-day task. Take stock and take inventory of what you have to do and slow down. So let's get into the slowdown. When I'm looking at my list, I often ask myself, what can I streamline? We often I have to go to this store on this day, and I have to pick up this on this day, and I have to do this on this day. It is actually helpful if you take no more than a minute or two to map out, for example, your route, or to cut out anything excessive in your list that doesn't have to be done. And the way that you can do that is remembering that just because something is important doesn't mean that that thing is urgent. I'm going to say that again because I know I need to hear it. Just because something is important, it doesn't mean it's urgent. How do we classify or prioritize that? Because some of you are saying, well, Joyce, all of it feels urgent. The holidays are on the corner. I have family in from out of town. Everything feels urgent. One way to help you prioritize urgent and important, or non-urgent and non-important, because that whole quadrant, I'll have a graphic up later when we go into this more deeply. Ask yourself, what happens if this task doesn't get done on the date and or time that I plan for it to get done? Will anything collapse? Will anything change? Will I be fired? Will my family hate me? Ask yourself what happens if the thing that I want to get done doesn't get done on the date and time I plan for it to get done. This will help you evaluate your task list, your to-do list with a new set of eyes and a fresh set of eyes. And it will help you see if the thing that feels urgent actually is urgent, because things can feel urgent without being urgent. Also, ask yourself, am I being reactive right now? If you don't set a schedule for your life, people will set that schedule for you. And people are going to be coming at you with demands, asks, tasks, end of the year wrap ups, all of these things. This is something that I practice every day, especially at work. I tell them, okay, when does this have to be done? Not when would you like this done? When does this have to be done? And if it's an internal deadline or something that doesn't affect the company at large, oftentimes you can shift that deadline. Oftentimes you can delegate. And these are just ways to take stock of what you have to do, to draw boundaries, especially during that holiday to-do list, and to make sure that you are not reacting to a situation and creating urgency where there need not be urgency. Remember, peace of mind is your birthright. And anything that isn't bringing you peace is going against your God-given birthright. Things are allowed to be challenging, but things should never affect your peace. And when the holidays come around and you feel your peace being affected by anything outstanding or other people, assess, slow down, reset, and recenter. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I cannot wait to see you on January 3rd. I'm wishing everyone happy holidays, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, definitely Happy New Year, and I'm encouraging all of you to go thrive. See you so soon.